you. So it's Virtual Covenant Renewal Sunday. And I don't know if Scott wants to put up the covenant or not, but anyway, you guys have all seen this. This isn't news to most of you, at least. And I wasn't sure what I had new to say about the covenant this week or at any point. It was a little tempting actually to go back and just pick out, my covenant sermon from 2 years ago and see if anyone noticed. But I was actually pretty sure somebody would. And Scott did screen sharing, and that means that I got to go back and find my sermon again. Here we go. Right. So that means, right, that anyway, we're not going to do a covenant sermon except obliquely this morning. But we've been working our way through the Gospel of Matthew this last year, and this Sunday I picked out these two stories, or this particular chunk, and they're two stories about bread. And if you look around Matthew, you actually notice that the bread theme starts about in the middle of chapter 14 and runs all the way till about the middle of chapter 16. So Jesus has a lot to say about bread. And so we're going to think about bread in the covenant this morning, because in Jesus' stories, bread is always metaphor. I mean, it's a lot of times it's actual bread. Sometimes people are being fed, right? The 7 loaves, pardon me, and the bits of fish. This was bread that people needed to eat, but it's also a metaphor for something else. And so Jesus is always moving back and forth between the two. So the first story, right? The story that Rachel talked about so well. The question was, who gets the bread? Right? And this, of course, is a metaphor for who gets to be part of the in group. And Jesus starts out by saying, no, the bread is for the worthy. The bread is only for the in group and not for the dogs. And it's hard. One of the problems in reading the New Testament or reading the Bible is that the Bible doesn't contain a lot of clues for us about tone of voice, right? And so, it'd be nice to have a video of this so we could see Jesus' facial expression and get his tone of voice. We just have to sort of figure out how he's saying this. And so people have suggested that, wow, this is Jesus being really mean. This is horrible Jesus, who's just being a nasty human being, who's calling her a dog. And that may be, right? Jesus has just walked 50 miles and basically he's on vacation. Right? He's in Tyre and Sidon. And these used to be some of the top vacation spots in the world until the last 50 years, when mostly they've been great places to get bombed. But this is a great place to go on vacation. They got great beaches. They got 12 months of the year, nice weather, mountains in the background, very pretty, right? And so he's there, and some woman just, says, oh, I need stuff from you. And he goes, I got no time for stuff. But it's also quite possible that Jesus is testing her, because Jesus does this all the time to people, right? They ask him a question, he throws out an answer, and then he waits to see how they respond. And so it's quite likely that that's what Jesus is doing, is I'm going to throw out this absolutely horrible answer, and I'm going to see how much faith she actually has, right? Does she know about God's power? What does she know about what God can do? What does she know about herself? What is she willing to do for this? And so she replies with, right, this great and really very wise reply. Right? She says, look, I'm not going to argue that I'm worthy. I'm not going to argue that I'm special in any sort of way. I know I'm not part of sort of the natural in-group that you think you're part of, Jesus. I'll take scraps. That's okay. If you just want to toss me scraps, you can call it whatever you want, Jesus. I've got a daughter. I need her healed. You can do it. All right, let's get this done. So let's think about the covenant in these terms, right? That this covenant that we're signing virtually today is not about us being special. It's not about, well, God likes this particular group in Morgantown better than all the other groups, and so we get to sign this covenant. It's not because we're better or because we're worthy, right? And especially at this point in history, where there's just a lot of stuff. Right? There's a lot of stuff that's going wrong, and yeah, it's just tough out there. And so, right, but we come here and we sign this covenant and we commit ourselves to each other, not because we're this worthy special group, but because at this point, we're just going to take scraps. We'll take whatever God gives us. And if we can reach out and help one another, all bonus, right? This is just a wonderful opportunity. We're not in any position to ask for special favors. It's just us. And we say that in the covenant, right? Right at the bottom, understanding that the faithful Christian life is not one of perfection, right? But of continued commitment. Understanding that the faithful Christian life is not about how good we are or who we are, or that we're going to do all of this right, but this is what we're committing ourselves to today. And if God, out of God's generosity, gives us scraps, we will take scraps. The second passage that Will just read, the question is slightly different. The question is there enough bread for everybody? And the obvious answer here is no. There isn't enough bread for everybody. 7 loaves, few fish, thousands of people, not going to work. This is one place where it relates really well to this book that the men's group has been reading, right? And so this book is called The Life You Can Save by Peter Singer, and it's available free online if you want to check it out for yourself. But basically, he's arguing that extreme poverty in the world can be fixed right now by us. It is being done. Rates of poverty in the world are lower than they've ever been at any time in history. Obviously, COVID has made things worse, right? But steps are being taken, things are being done, and they're working. And we can be part of the solution, right? And in little ways, as long as we do this smartly and as long as we do this well. So these, right? So in a lot of ways, like the story, right? These huge problems, right? It's not, 4,000 men and all the women and children. It's, 400 million men and all the women and children, or 2 billion men. I don't know how many the numbers are right now. But first of all, they're a lot smaller than you think they are. The problems are being dealt with in creative and interesting sorts of ways. And yes, your little bit matters. The same is also true in a much smaller way in our little church, right? That in some ways we're a pretty together, successful group of people, but I'm guessing most of your days you don't feel that way. And if you do, congratulations. But this time it's really hard for anybody in the world to think about themselves as sort of we've got it all together. We're all fine here. But we have this opportunity, even as we're feeling like we're feeling, right? Even in this time, to take a little bit of this energy we have and to reach out to somebody else. And the problems are so big, right? The problems are big in our church and then in our community and in our nation. Oh boy, right? And in the world, right? And our job is to do what we can, and it's God's job to make it enough. That's God's task. And that's so wonderful, just to say, okay, look, I'm going to do this, right? Is it enough? Not my problem. Right? I'm going to do what I can as well as I can, right? Is it enough? God's problem. Such a wonderful thing to be able to give this problem to God. Just let God worry about that part. So we come to our covenant, right? our metaphorical bread. And we come together this morning and we say, this is who we are, part of the covenant. We are not the worthy, we are not the pure, we are not the righteous. We come with our little bit of faith, right? Our little mustard seed faith, maybe not even quite that big, but God willing, it's going to be the size of a mustard seed someday. This is who we are. And this is what we commit ourselves to be and to do. And we do that because these things matter. And, there's lots of organizations that don't get together as often as we do. We get together every week for over an hour, right? And I know some days it's like, well, okay, I'll go to church this morning. But what we're really aiming for is, you're going to have to get through the rest of this week. And here you have a little opportunity to gather with a group of people and try together to find enough faith, to find enough energy, to find enough courage to get yourself through another week and to get the people around you through another week. And this is a wonderful opportunity, this covenant, to take this little bit of faith and give it to God and say, okay, I commit myself to this, God, you can make this enough. Usually this is the time when I invite people to come forward and to sign their names on this piece of poster board. Obviously, we're not going to do that this year. Obviously the choir should be singing Just As I Am in the background. So if someone wants to hum that, they can do that. But, that's, of course, I'm kidding. Right? But, right, I want you just to at least take a moment sometime in this past week or this next week to look at this and go, yeah, this is still worthwhile. This is still what I want to be and what I want to do this coming year. So we're going to go now to breakout rooms. And the question I'd like you to focus on is just you and the covenant, right? What does this covenant do for you? Does it challenge you? Does it comfort you? Does it give you a sense of belonging? Does it make you frustrated? Just look at these words and respond to them. What are they doing inside of you right now?